The last train to Winter Lake. On a cold evening in northern Canada, a young man named Daniel stood alone on a train platform. Snow was falling softly from the dark sky, covering the ground like white sugar. The wind moved quietly through the empty station, and the sound of an old clock echoed in the silence. Daniel looked at the small paper ticket in his hand. Winter Lake. It was the name of a town he had never visited before. 3 days earlier, Daniel had received a letter from his grandfather. The letter was short and simple. "If you still remember our promise, come to Winter Lake before Christmas." That was all. Daniel had not seen his grandfather for almost 15 years. When he was a child, he spent every winter with him in a small cabin near a frozen lake. They used to fish together, cook soup over a fire, and watch the northern lights dance across the sky. But after Daniel's parents moved to the city, life changed. School became busy. Then work became busy. Little by little, the visits stopped. First, Daniel called often, then sometimes, then almost never. Now, standing at the station, Daniel felt something heavy in his chest. Regret. The train arrived slowly through the snow. Its bright lights cut through the darkness like two glowing eyes. The doors opened with a loud hiss. Daniel stepped inside. The train was nearly empty. An old woman sat near the window knitting a scarf. A businessman slept quietly with a newspaper on his face. A little girl drew pictures in a notebook while her mother read a book beside her. Daniel sat alone and watched the snowy world pass outside. Hour after hour, forests covered in white appeared and disappeared in the darkness. Small villages glowed with warm yellow lights. The train moved deeper into the winter night. After some time, the old woman across from him smiled gently. "Going home for Christmas?" she asked. Daniel hesitated. "I'm not sure if it still feels like home," he answered. The woman nodded slowly as if she understood. "Sometimes," she said softly, "home waits longer than we deserve." Her words stayed in Daniel's mind long after she returned to her knitting. Near midnight, the train suddenly stopped. The lights flickered once. Then silence. Passengers looked around nervously. A conductor walked through the train. "Mechanical problem," he announced. "We may be delayed for several hours." Some passengers complained immediately. The businessman checked his watch angrily. The little girl sighed dramatically. But Daniel didn't mind. For the first time in many months, he had nowhere else to be. He walked toward the dining car to buy coffee. Inside, warm yellow lights filled the room. A radio played soft jazz music from somewhere behind the counter. Daniel ordered coffee and sat near the window. A man in a dark green coat sat nearby reading an old book. After a few minutes, the man spoke without looking up. "Funny how trains work." Daniel looked at him curiously. "What do you mean?" The man closed his book slowly. "Everyone on a train is between places. Between old memories and new ones. Between who they were and who they might become." Daniel smiled faintly. "That sounds poetic." The man laughed. "Maybe. Or maybe I've just spent too much time traveling." They talked for almost an hour. The stranger's name was Elias. He used to be a photographer who traveled around the world taking pictures of people and cities. But now he mostly traveled without a destination. "Why?" Daniel asked. Elias stared out at the snow. "Because I spent my whole life chasing success," he said quietly. "And one day I realized I had photographs of thousands of strangers, but almost none of the people I loved." Daniel felt those words deeply. For a moment, he thought about deleting the email drafts on his phone, the messages he kept meaning to send to old friends, to family members, to people he missed but never contacted. Maybe someday had become too easy to say. Hours later, the train finally started moving again. At 4 a.m., Daniel arrived at Winter Lake Station. The town was small and silent beneath the snow. Christmas lights hung across the streets, glowing red, gold, and blue against the dark sky. Daniel walked slowly through the cold air, carrying his suitcase toward the old cabin near the lake. Every step brought back memories. The bakery where his grandfather bought cinnamon bread. The bookstore where Daniel once spent an entire snowstorm reading adventure novels. the frozen lake where they used to skate together. Nothing had changed, and somehow everything had. Finally, Daniel reached the cabin. Warm light shined through the windows. Smoke rose gently from the chimney. Daniel stood frozen for a moment before knocking softly on the door. Footsteps approached. The door opened. His grandfather looked older now. His hair was completely white, and deep lines covered his face. But his eyes were exactly the same. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Then his grandfather smiled. "You're late," he said gently. Daniel laughed quietly, trying not to cry. "I know." The old man pulled him into a warm hug, and suddenly 15 years of distance disappeared. Inside the cabin, the fire crackled warmly. The smell of soup filled the air. On the table sat 2 bowls already prepared. "You knew I'd come?" Daniel asked. His grandfather shrugged. "I hoped." They ate dinner together while snow fell outside. They talked for hours. About life. About mistakes. About lost time. And about the strange way love survives even silence. Near dawn, Daniel stepped outside alone. The frozen lake stretched across the world like silver glass. Above him, green northern lights slowly moved through the sky. Beautiful. Silent. Endless. Daniel remembered something his grandfather once told him when he was a boy. The world is full of second chances. But you must arrive before the door closes. For the first time in years, Daniel felt peaceful. Not because his problems had disappeared, but because he finally stopped running from the people who mattered most. Behind him, the cabin door opened. His grandfather handed him a warm cup of tea. Together, they stood quietly beneath the dancing northern lights, watching the winter sky welcome a new morning. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe for more English learning stories. See you in the next video.